Welcome to Ocean Ideas, the podcast where trusted scientists, ocean advocates, and big thinkers share powerful stories and insights about our blue planet. Let's dive in. In this episode of Crashing Through the Trash, experts from government, science, and sustainability explore how policy, personal action, and education can drive real solutions to the ocean plastic crisis.
Rupert, Lottie, Scott, very nice to have you all on stage to further these conversations around how we solve this ocean trash, ocean litter, ocean and marine debris crisis. Rupert, I might start with you, if you don't mind. And just picking up on this piece, maybe carrying on from this discussion around contained deposit schemes, which was again a New South Wales Government initiative. What else is the New South Wales Government do to tackle the ocean litter crisis?
So we in New South Wales have a positive story to tell. I'm conscious that the irony of talking about a positive story when we're in a session about crisis, but there is a good story to tell. I will say without a skerrick of hubris that I think New South Wales is by far the world leader in litter prevention. We have a really sophisticated data monitoring program that guides everything we do and tracks the progress we make, and I can maybe talk about that a little bit later, but essentially measuring litter in the ocean, inland, and also microplastics as well, which I'll leave to Scott to talk about. We have really deep understanding research about who's doing the litter and how. And we've demonstrated over the period that we've been able to reduce litter quite substantially. James, you mentioned about the Premier's priority previously, and we had a target from 2015 to 2020 to reduce litter by 40%, and we achieved that target. And off the back of that, we set a new, more ambitious target to reduce litter by 60%. That's over and above that target by 2030, and we've already seen a 50% reduction. So we're well on the way to achieving that target. But evidence-based design through our policies, our campaigns. We'd run the TOSA campaign, which really targeted towards changing people's behaviour. We have a range of grant programs as well. But also on the policy side of things, we've seen the impact of return and earn, which you mentioned has seen reduction in containers by 75%. But the recent plastic phase-outs, which is phasing out some of these highly littered items like straws and plastics, have been remarkably successful. Plastic bags have pretty much removed from the litter stream, reducing by 90% since they were phased out in a couple of years ago. And similarly, straws, which were the top littered item we were finding in the marine environment, they have reduced by 85%. So really positive stories. We don't want to go down the Donald Trump path of reversing bans. It's important that you bring the community along, and the community's really bought into it as well. And it's really heartening to see. So lots of good progress.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And it might be now interesting to hear from Lottie. You talk a lot about the behavioural change piece that the government can influence. But as individuals, what can individuals do to play their part in offsetting climate change and what have you?
Yeah, I think we've got a really great panel here because we've kind of got government and we've also got big organisations, but then I think that kind of the best thing that we can do is value the individuals and how much we can actually do to influence behaviour change. And yes, we can put something into the recycling bin or into a container deposit scheme, but we can also not consume that item in the first place. And I think that's something that's really important to highlight. It's bringing your reusables. It's not relying on these single-use plastics. And I think that as a group and a community, the impact that we can have together is something that I don't think that we really value highly enough.
And so Lottie is, again, Young Australian of the Year in this organisation that you're now leading, Banish. Do you want to explain to people how Banish is helping people to reduce their environmental footprint and what have you?
Yeah, so we're an education platform, first and foremost, that helps teach individuals, schools and corporate organisations how to live more sustainably, whether that's to recycle right, reduce your consumption, compost, really the whole scope of things. What we like to see ourselves as is that kind of that catalyst for change, that first step. We help everybody do something, take that next step and that action. And then also we have BRAD. So BRAD is the Banish Recycling and Diversion Program that recycles the unwanted items. So things that can't go in your yellow bin, like blister packs, beauty products, single bottle top lids when they're nice and loose. And we turn them into different items using different Australian micro recyclers.
Just quickly, I believe you might have written a book just recently.
Yes, just also, thank you for that one, quick plug. It is called 365 Plus Ways to Save Your Money and the Planet at the Same Time. CDS schemes are obviously a great way to save money and the planet at the same time, but you can also read the book as well.
Okay, there we go, the book. That's amazing. Thanks, Lottie. Now I might just pass to Dr. Scott from the Australian Microplastics Assessment Projects. I think we've all heard the stories about microplastics in our natural environment, smothering the oceans, choking fish and what have you. Heard reports that some of us are all... We may be carrying a little bit of plastic in all of our botanics, but should we be worried about the impacts they're having? That's the first question for you, Scott.
Yeah, most definitely. I think, the evidence is clear now that microplastics are everywhere, as we've heard in the media, and in the scientific literature. It's now throughout our bodies, it's throughout the waterways, it's in our land, it's in our air. So it's all around us. The data is still out in terms of what potential impacts that is having to us as humans. We do know there's impacts to wildlife from those tiny bits of plastic. So I'm going to paraphrase a former Prime Minister and say we should be alert but not alarmed, because the evidence isn't clear right at this moment. But as Lottie said, we should be reducing how much maybe we're exposed to and using a precautionary principle until we know more.
Yeah, so just picking up on that theme, Scott, what is AUSMAP doing, the Microplastic Assessment Project, to really influence that and address this microplastics pollution issue?
Yeah, so we're a citizen science program, so we are around education and awareness raising about the issue, but we're also about collecting the data. So we go around the country and collect information on how much microplastic is actually there. So we're actually using hard data to make some change, and then work with regulators and local governments to get some local action. Because what we find is most of that plastic is actually coming locally. We've heard of all these great ocean garbage patches, but most of the issues we have locally is coming from us locally.
And I think part of the conversation, these ongoing themes, is not just about behavioural change, but it's also about education. I think people in a lot of instances want to do the right thing, but are often a little bit confused as to doing the right thing. So I might pass back in. Rupert, you mentioned a lot of the programs being undertaken by the New South Wales government in that regard. Obviously the return and earn being one of the most prominent examples, but any others that you might just want to mention or discuss in more detail?
Yeah, sure. I suppose picking up on your point about behaviour change, we've spent about 2 years doing some really in-depth research to understand the drivers of the littering problem, who's doing the littering, why are they doing it, their mindsets. If you are a litterer, we know absolutely everything about you. We know what you have for breakfast, we know the papers that you read, we know what you do at night, we know where you're travelling, but really targeting our behaviour change programs right through that point of where you consume your items, where you travel, how you litter, and how resistant you are to change. So how do we have conversations with you? So we have our big TOSA campaign, which is very effective, but we have lots of different other avenues. We've got some big litter items out here you may have seen, showing the impacts of the litter items. There's a fish, hopefully you've seen that, the fish with the cigarette butts, and so that's a really important way so people know the impact, because I can talk for hours on behaviour change, so shut me up, but there's...
Okay, really, thanks, Ruben.
One quick point is that it's really interesting because, we all know littering's wrong, right? But we all sort of make excuses for why we do it. So the campaigns really dig down into sort of understand the psyche and really get people to connect their behaviour with the impact. And these items out here are really showing that impact, and that's how you get the behaviour change. Yeah.
And so maybe that's a good cut across to you there, Lottie. You mentioned before all these different products that we consume and wonder what to do at end of life. How can some of the programs that you've led and delivered, Banish, Brad and what have you, how can people participate in those to really make an impact on their environmental footprint?
Yes, I think the biggest one for us is we use social media first and foremost as a way to connect and educate with people. So we are on TikTok, no dancing videos, I promise. But there is a lot of education that we're doing, because it's all of those small things about kind of what's the one thing that you can do right now that's going to have an impact and make a difference. But also with the Brad program, we're trying to change people's behaviours. So it's about collecting all of these items like plastic toothbrushes, pumps and sprays from body washes, and acknowledging that yes, we've all got plastic in our homes right now, but once you've finished with that item, then make the switch to a different item, say a bamboo toothbrush, say a good old-fashioned bar of soap. So I think for us, that's what it is. It's about taking people on the journey, because I believe that sustainability isn't a destination. It's something that we're continually evolving, we're continually growing and working at, and that's what we want to be, is that friend to help them along that journey.
Right, and one more question before we just open it up to the floor for Scott. Again, this term microplastics, it's quite a horrifying concept, right? And I think people hear it and go, ooh, it's something that everybody's a little bit perturbed by, speaking, and it goes to the point no one quite understands it fully. But there's things we can do. So really a simple way to say, individuals, you can do this to impact the world of microplastics. What do people need to do?
Yeah, it's similar to what Lottie was saying, that, you know, it's about reducing how much we expose ourselves to. So we know there was all these microbeads that were put into cosmetics and toothpaste and things like that. That's been taken off the market, partly because of pressure from consumers, and partly because of the potential environmental impacts. So, you know, it's about being aware, being smart shoppers, and knowing what's in your product, because, you know, there's microplastics in sunscreens, there's microplastics in a lot of things. So there's a website called Beat the Bead, so you can look it up and you can scan your product and you can see what's in there, if there's any microplastics, so things like that.
Can I jump in here?
Sure.
Because I did a post about this yesterday. Another way that everybody in this room could reduce the amount of microplastics they're putting out into the world or the ocean is through your washing. So when you wash your clothes, it's estimated that 500 million microplastics enter our oceans. So what a good way to do that is to wash your clothes less. When you do wash them, wash full loads, slow down your spin cycle and wash on cold. It's something that everyone can go home and do, and that's going to reduce the microplastic breakages that's coming off.
So you can help the environment by just throwing your shirts on your bedroom floor and not washing them for a while. That's
definitely not saying that was me.
Right. So, folks, we have fought our way back on time here. What a well-chaired panel. But we do have time for questions. We've got a very broad range of experience sitting up here on the panel with government, Scott in the microplastics, Lottie in really being an Australian leader in the circular economy and reducing people's environmental footprint. So please, we have a couple of minutes here for questions and we can open that to the floor.
Why aren't there more EPRs where the product's incentivised so that we have a better recycling rate? Batteries, McDonald's packages.
And you may have seen the recent changes in the Parliament only the other day, where the government's now looking at just that. So things like batteries in particular that we know are starting to cause quite a lot of harm and fires. That's definitely the direction that the government is taking. And yeah, totally agree. When you've got products like vapes that pull apart, you can recycle 7-8 different parts of them in different ways, then yeah, definitely you've got to have schemes in place that support that, and that's something the government's doing. So you may have seen something in the news recently about that. Yeah.
One more question here. Sorry, I was just going to ask, what's next for each of you? How are we going to really make change long term? What's the next little step that we need to make?
Okay, I'll go first then. So for us at Banish, obviously we're talking about the book a lot, which is really exciting, but we're also about to launch our kids education program, which is going to be run both virtually but also in schools, so helping to educate the next generation on what they can be doing in terms of changing their behaviours, but also learning from the beginning. Because for kids, sustainability is very black and white, and then it's when you get all of these different habits and behaviours that you start changing. So we're really trying to educate them from the ground up. So that's our next big thing.
Yes, similar with AUSMAP, we're trying to educate people and raise awareness as well, but more the broader public. So we're a nationwide program. So if anyone wants to get involved in it, you can help understand your local microplastic problems. So it'll be a kind of a broad campaign launch to try and recruit people to help us understand their local microplastics problem.
I suppose on a micro level, there's lots of programs the government's releasing. We've got a new Streets to Sea program, which is working with council partners to understand those flow points of which litter flows from land to sea through the stormwater system, and that's predominantly how most of the litter, 80% of the marine debris we find, is coming through the stormwater system and from land. So there's programs like that. I suppose big picture, the focus really is to make this transition to a circular economy, and the waste and sustainable material strategies, which the current strategy is outlining that transition. Because what you want is to have a completely different way that you look at waste. You're not looking at waste as waste, you're looking at it as a valuable resource. And I'd like to think when people, in the future, they look at something on the ground, a bit of litter, they don't see it as litter, they see it as a valuable resource. And that's a mind shift, that's a community, that's a government transition. And so then once we get to that position, I think, you're in a good, you're in a good space. Yeah.
Hi guys. So the amount of microplastics that's going into the water system, for example, and I know that the waste recycling facilities that we've got here in Sydney, they don't recycle or they don't protect the outflow of microplastics. As you said earlier, James, that there needs to be a financial incentive. So if the government here can find money to build tunnels and tunnels and tunnels all across Australia to keep the economy moving, what's it going to take for New South Wales government and the Australian government in a broader sense to make or take an impact or take an action on microplastics?
I suppose that's directed to me. Look, I think you can do both. The government has invested significant amounts in litter prevention. We have a $38 million program just in litter prevention alone, and there's lots of other funding for broader waste programs as well. On the microplastics issue, we work closely with Scott. We do lots of monitoring. We've just done this broad-scale microplastics assessment across all of New South Wales waterways to understand what's the type of microplastics that we're finding in the waterways, and investing in then understanding exactly where these plastics are coming from so we can work upstream. We've got programs like Operation Clean Sweep that works with plastic manufacturers to install systems and processes in places that stop the flow of those microplastics, and then we're moving to a compliance a stage on that program as well. So I can't talk on investment in roads, but there is definitely a big investment in the waste and litter prevention and microplastics. Yeah.
And I'll just add to that, on the federal level, so if you're not aware, there's a global plastics treaty that's currently being discussed. Microplastics will be included as the text currently stands, so microplastics will be included in that, and the Australian government is quite proactive in kind of implementing a hard treaty. So from a federal level, we'll probably see some measures. There already is some measures, but there'll be more measures coming around that.
Hiya. I'm just wondering, I know that we can recycle our plastics like bottles, and we can just not pick them up in the first place. But I'm just wondering, if we've known how bad the problem is for so long, why are they still on the shelves? And is it just because there isn't really an alternative? And is it just based on profit for these big companies? They don't want to remove them from the shelves, essentially?
That's a good one. Look, if I was to... I think a bit of an answer there is that these are part and parcel of everyday life, right? Individuals have a choice. You have a choice not to use a plastic bottle if you so wish. It's as simple as that, right? So this always starts with consumption and choices at the end of life. So I don't think it's realistic. I don't think we want governments to come in and start banning things wholly and solely. If you often hear the refrains from that part of industry, it's not the product itself that's the problem, it's what's done with it at the end of its life. That's a certain way of looking at that. I've heard that said before, but what I would say is it's an individual's choice, and you can make quite a significant impact around your own choices.
Could I jump in there too? I say it's really important when you make these changes that you're bringing the community along with you as well. If you go out too far, it can have you can have negative consequences. Again, I'm sorry to talk about Donald Trump, but you look what's happened with the straw ban there. They banned plastic straws, and then you've got a different leader who comes in and reverts that ban, because you could make an argument you haven't had the opportunity to bring the community along. So sometimes there is a bit of a risk in if you make changes without selling the reasons and the impacts. And so, as I said, in New South Wales, we've seen a 80% reduction in plastic straw litter. So we've got to communicate those benefits. That's why I'm here, and make sure that we can continue that change, and that you're not necessarily jumping out too far ahead if you haven't brought the community along with you. Yep.
So look, thank you very much, Rupert, Scott, Lottie. Great panel. Thank everyone for your participation.
Knowledge creates ripples. Share this episode, start a conversation, and make the ocean more visible in your community. Together, we can create change.